My sister borrowed money from me, claiming it was for hospital bills, but she forgot to remove me from social media. That's how I found out she wasn't at the hospital. She was on a week-long vacation, at the same place where my husband just so happened to be on a business trip. I was ready and waiting for them when they returned for this. I, 26, female, got married to my boyfriend, 28, male, of 3 years around a year ago. We've been fighting a lot lately over money because he's out of a job right now. His company laid off several people due to downsizing 5 months ago, and he happened to be one of them. He did manage to find a job a few weeks back, but it doesn't pay half as well, and we need the money if we want to be able to afford the lifestyle we currently have. I want him to keep looking while working at this place, but he doesn't feel like looking anymore, which is why we've been fighting. I work as well, but I can't take on the responsibility of paying all the bills myself. I don't make that kind of money, and I need help. So we've been fighting over that. I'll admit, I've been very snippy, but that's just because most of my paycheck is going into paying the bills, and I haven't been able to save, which is the problem for me. And he just doesn't get it. Anyway, around a week ago, we got into a big fight over the rent the night before his work trip, and he left without even saying goodbye. I was really upset since even if we'd fight, he'd never leave without telling me. So that was a first. And then my day got worse. I'd let my sister, Isabel, 23 female, borrow some money for medical bills because she said she twisted her ankle really badly and needed my help. She doesn't live in the same state, so I couldn't go visit her either, but I did send her the money and hope for the best. This had been a few days before the day my husband left, and I hadn't told him about it. This was also the reason I hadn't been able to make rent on time since I'd lent my sister the money I'd needed. I kept it a secret and ended up fighting with my husband, which I now regret. But then that day, a few hours after my husband left, I was going through Instagram and realized that my sister had posted a bunch of pictures from a beach. Her ankle didn't seem twisted in the least because she was running into the sea by herself and posing for every picture without a trace of pain or discomfort on her face. Ankles don't heal that quickly, and I knew instantly that she'd lied to me. And like an idiot, she'd forgotten to block me as well. What's worse was that she'd even added her location, and that's exactly where my husband had gone for his business trip. I was stunned when I realized that not only had my sister lied to me for money, but she'd also managed to somehow land up at the same place as my husband. I got to thinking and decided to take a chance and call my husband's office to request a meeting with him. But the receptionist told me that he didn't work there anymore and had quit just 2 days back. There it was, clear as day. He'd lied to me and gone away on a vacation with my younger sister pretending he was on a work trip while I actually did work to pay all our bills, and he blew his money on fancy vacations. I didn't know what I was more upset about, honestly. Once I put 22 together, I started crying and didn't know when I stopped. I think I must have got nothing done apart from crying and occasionally sleeping during the next few hours. I knew that there was no running away from the truth. They definitely were together. I wasn't going to pretend that this was some coincidence and try to give them the benefit of the doubt. That wasn't the case, and I was aware of it. It just sucked because I hadn't seen this coming at all. There had been no signs and no way for me to prepare myself mentally for it either. I don't know what went wrong. Maybe it was the fighting, but that wasn't my fault. And the worst betrayal was my sister's because I was always ready to do whatever it took to put a smile on her face, and here she was, hooking up with my husband and going on fancy vacations with him, which was funded by my money. The longer I thought about it, the angrier I felt. And by the 4th day, I only wanted to get back at them. I just wanted them to feel as hurt as I was and ruin their lives. I wasn't gonna do anything while they were out on vacation, but waited for my husband to come back instead. My sister would probably head back home instead, but my husband would have nowhere else to go. So I waited for that entire week, and last night, my husband finally came back home. I prepared a feast for him. And when I heard his car pull up in the driveway, I turned out all the lights and lit awesome candles. I'd already made a path to the table with rose petals. Yeah, I'd put in the work since this was probably going to be our last date night ever. He seemed pleasantly surprised when he entered the house and was even more shocked when he realized that I'd done my hair up the way he liked, but I hated and was even wearing a dress that he bought me while we were dating. I pulled out all the stops and he was definitely enjoying it. I can't imagine how he was so okay with this after he'd come back from a week-long vacation where he'd done nothing except spend his money on my sister. It was disgusting, but I managed to put on my best smile and tried to make him feel at home. I apologized for the fight we'd had before he left, and he forgave me instantly. After some time, we got to having dinner and he kept complimenting me on the food I'd made. When he got to dessert, I served him my special brownies, and I think he must have had 3 of those. Once he was done, I decided to finally confront him. I showed him the pictures that my sister had posted and asked him how his business trip had been right after I handed him the pictures. He wasn't a stupid guy. He knew exactly what I was talking about, but tried to pretend like he didn't. He said his business trip had been pleasant enough, but pretended like he didn't understand the relevance of these pictures. That's when I told him that I called his workplace and I already knew that he quit his job. I'd already filed for a divorce as soon as I'd realized that he'd been out there cheating on me and served him with the papers once he was done with dinner. I didn't even wait around to find out what he had to say about any of this and walked out of the house with my already packed bags and drove to a hotel. Then I called my parents up and told them that they needed to stop sending money to my sister immediately. I explained the situation to them and they were just as shocked as I was and said they dealt with my sister. She just started working and was yet to receive her first paycheck, so I knew that she'd be screwed without the help of my parents. I wish I could fly all the way to where she was and slap the living daylights out of her, but for now, this would have to do. She'd be stranded in a new city with nobody to look out for her because she'd stabbed me in the back, and I guess that would be the best lesson for her. As for my husband, please don't be misled. I didn't just cook him a beautiful dinner and give him one last date to remember. He definitely would remember this, but not for the reasons people would expect. I've called the brownies I made for him special because they were laced with laxatives and he'd definitely be sick for a few days. I didn't tell him about it and got rid of all the evidence as well, so I have nothing to worry about. But this morning, I received a call from my husband and he told me that I needed to pay his hospital bills because that's how sick he'd fallen. Of course, I hadn't intended on sending him to the hospital, but I don't really feel bad for him. He says that he knows I'm the one who caused this, but he can't prove it, so I don't feel threatened either. Maybe if he hadn't spent all his money on a week-long vacation with his sister, he would have been able to cover the medical expenses, or better yet, there would have been no expenses at all. This is completely on him, and I don't feel bad for him at all. Ida for not paying for his trip to the hospital? Update 1. So I ended up not paying for anything, and he's furious at me, which isn't very surprising. But I blocked him, so he cannot get to me anymore, and neither am I interested in what happens to him beyond this point. He had it pretty good with me, but now he's going to learn how to be on his own the hard way, just like my sister is. She also tried to get through to me a few hours back, but I didn't respond to any of her calls. So she took to spamming me with texts. Apparently, my parents had told her that they were ashamed of what she'd done and had cut her off entirely. She had to buy groceries today itself because everything had rotted during the 1 week that she wasn't here, and she was accusing me of trying to starve her based on nothing but an Instagram post. I mean, she really can't think I'm that stupid. But I didn't respond to her text either and even blocked her. So now, she has nobody to turn to for help. How she manages to pay for things is on her now. Both my husband and sister had me looking out for them so far, but they've lost me forever now. After what they did and the pain they've caused me, they deserve every awful thing that I'm doing to them. People can call me whatever they want, psychotic, or evil, or heartless, but I don't care. I was the one making all the sacrifices so that they could have what they wanted. And despite that, they decided to screw me over and betrayed me. I'm lucky that my sister had forgotten to block me or else I never would have found out about any of this either.